Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, ObjectivelyDan, and this is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to you about what you believe and why. And every single week, I always have a very special guest. This week is no different. It's Eve Was Framed from TikTok, YouTube, all over the internet. Eve, what's going on?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to hang out.
Thank you so much for being on the show. Now, you guys might be looking behind me and noticing this is not my apartment, and that's because this is a new apartment that I just moved into. So the week before we just did the live show last week, I moved into a new place. So I have like this half, like I'm literally in my closet right now in this little setup here. It's kind of cozy. But this is kind of the new setup going forward. I'm going to see what I do with it. But I do want to talk about what we did last week. In case you guys missed it, we had our very first in-person event since the pandemic as an organization for the Atheist community of Austin, which produces this show. We got to do it live in San Antonio for the Secular Student Alliance. And our goal for the night was actually a fundraiser for the group there. Our goal was $5,000 raised. And between doing the show that night and doing the show on the Sunday shows with Atheist Experience and Talk Heathen, we ended up raising $4,002.64. And I'm so happy about that, guys, because that budget is basically going to hold the SSA's activities for like a whole year. You know, that's going completely to that group. We had an excellent time there. I got to meet a bunch of people that were fans of the show and just hang out with folks I haven't seen in a long time. It was a lot of, the crew ourselves haven't gotten to talk to each other in person for a long time. So that was just really, really fun. I highly recommend you guys check that episode out because it was definitely super special. That was last week's episode of Truth Wanted. But this week's episode of Truth Wanted, I have another special guest, and it's, of course, Eve Was Framed, as I introduced before. Eve, thanks so much for being on the show tonight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I'm stoked to take some callers and hang out and chat and all of that.
Yes, and so this is a live call-in show, so if you are new to the show, you should definitely consider calling in. We'll be talking to you guys in a second, but for now, you can call in at 512-991-9242. Or you can visit that link below if you want to call in on the computer, and we'd be happy to talk to you. Eve, you are a really cool person to talk to. I think I'm actually really excited to get to talk to you right now because you have a very, very interesting story, and I don't want to like prime it at all. I want you to like talk about who you are and what you've been up to. So, but let's start from the beginning. Eve, you grew up in a very evangelical environment. And now you're here talking on Truth Wanted, as part of the Atheist community of Austin. So let's start from the beginning. What was that like?
Yeah, it's a big change. So I grew up in an evangelical household. My grandparents and their parents were all evangelical missionaries or pastors. One was like intercessor for Billy Graham. That's my whole background. And my parents became pastors and missionaries when I was about 8 years old. And I was homeschooled my entire life with Christian curriculums, all of it. So
you were deep in the paint is how I would describe it.
I was
right?
So deep.
That is like evangelicalism in a nutshell, right? Parents are missionaries. You got the homeschool education. I would challenge someone to be more evangelical than that. That's a lot. That's a lot of credentials you got on your resume, I gotta say.
It was pretty. Yeah, it was very. I think I'm even learning more and more now as I talk to normal people how evangelical my childhood was. But yeah, it wasn't even I didn't even know that it could be an option to be anything but that. Like that was my life. I at 3 years old was um very aware of the concept of hell and very aware of the idea of salvation and constantly, trying to make sure I was saved. I remember at night, like being 4 years old and making sure Jesus was in my heart and that I didn't do anything too bad that day.
Mm,
A lot of OCD tendencies around that as well that I've
yeah.
had to go through therapy for since then. But yeah, extremely evangelical. Then I went on to decide as a teenager, like, well, I need to make this choice for myself, and which really was just me like indoctrinating myself further. Um, Deep dove into all of the youth group stuff. I went to all kinds of different Jesus camp type situations. I was a worship leader. I was
Mhm.
told that I was called by God to use my voice for Him. Um, and right around my teen years is when my parents started getting into dominion theology. And they actually call it Seven Mountain theology. My dad wrote several books on it.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's the idea that it's basically Christian nationalism. That we're supposed to
Yeah.
be involved, yeah, in politics, arts and entertainment, media,
Yep.
uh,
So,
everything.
yeah, just to clarify for viewers who are not familiar with this, the seven, it's not seven pillars, seven peaks, right? Seven peaks,
Seven,
isn't it?
seven mountains. There's seven
Seven
pillars.
mountains,
They
seven
all use
pillars,
different
different
terminology
things, right?
for
The
same thing.
idea behind this sort of ideology is that Christians should be influencing in all spheres of life, right?
Yes.
And so these seven ideas, I can't remember all the top of my head, but it's politics, it's education, it's entertainment. It's literally just like everything that we as people just like consume and like live our lives through. Like, and this idea is, well, Christianity is the correct religion, and it's not only is it supreme, but it's also responsible for literally saving people's lives, right? Like saving people's current lives and then afterlives. And so the idea is that this is a denomination that follows this idea that we should be influencing
Right.
all these things. So a lot of these kinds of groups that you're seeing right now that are influencing the abortion debate right now, a lot of the groups that you see are influencing the education bills going on in this country. Like that's because some of those groups that are funding this are from these churches that have this theology. So it's wild. You don't like people outside the United States might find that surprising, but it's a very critical part of U.S. politics, and it has been like a very important base for a number of years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's big. And literally they have like ministry schools for it and they train you. And
Yeah.
so that's what I was trained in, was to be an influencer,
Mm-hmm.
ironically enough. And that was my goal in life, was to like influence the world, to take on the qualities of the kingdom so that we could bring the kingdom to earth.
Right. Mm.
Uh,
So you grew up in this environment, and like at some point you're starting to think, well, maybe not all this is actually true, right? What age did you start having these thoughts?
I think the doubts were there all along. I'm a
Mm,
super critical thinker in every other area of my life. And I think they were there. And I would ask questions and then I would be given like a very generic answer, the ones we're all used to hearing, like from apologists and stuff. Um, and I was too afraid to stop believing. So I just didn't go very deep with it.
mm,
Um, I went through a really traumatic purity culture marriage is what I call it
mm,
at 19, and then a very traumatic divorce, and the way that the church treated me throughout that, and um, it had me really questioning a lot about Christianity, but I was determined to still continue in my relationship with God. So
yeah.
I continued. I moved forward in life. I ended up going to Bethel's Supernatural School of Ministry, which
Yes. Okay, just to point out, you and I were in a group chat with some other people, and the moment you said you were part of the Bethel School of Supernatural Ministry, I think was when I was like, I need to invite this person on my show.
Yeah, it's as weird as it sounds.
Mm,
It I only lasted 6 months and I was an atheist,
mm,
which was mostly actually because they really do allow for you to ask a lot of questions and you start learning more and more. And the things they teach are so freaking bizarre that you have to start questioning things if you
Sure.
at all have critical thinking skills. So
That makes sense. Yeah, you kind of
yeah,
get the most you get like again deep in the paint, right? You're like
yes.
right there. You see the bear like this is what we really think about the world and how it operates. And then
Totally.
yeah, it doesn't get any deeper than that, right? Like you're at the
Right.
base, you know?
Well, and I
Interesting.
started going there right when Trump got elected. And that
Mm,
was a huge turning point for me because my parents' ministry went from being a very progressive voice. They were some of the first white evangelicals to speak in favor of Black Lives Matter movement, which was a big deal amongst my dad's peers.
interesting.
My mom, I remember her celebrating the Marriage Equality Act passing, stuff like that. And then as soon as Trump came on the scene, it just went downhill from there. They suddenly changed up on everything.
Yeah. So, like, again, speaking, the Atheist Community of Austin is a 501c
Yeah,
nonprofit.
sorry.
We C3 nonprofit. Right? We can't endorse political candidates, but it is just an absolute fact. If you look at, I believe Gallup polls have talked about this. Pew Research polls have talked about this. This is an empirical fact. One of the biggest predictors of the 2016 Trump election was if you were evangelical or not.
Yep.
If you were evangelical, you were almost total. I don't know what the percentage was, but it was higher than every single other kind of religious denomination in this country to vote for Trump. And for some people, that might be surprising. But did you find that surprising growing up in that culture?
Yeah, I remember being really taken aback by it because we had all like kind of been progressing our views.
Mm.
I remember thinking like, wait, what? But then that caused me to look at the history of evangelicalism, and it was totally on brand. And it
Mm.
was absolutely matched the values that evangelicalism holds. It didn't match the values that I thought Jesus had, but that's
Yeah.
how I figured out evangelical values and Jesus values are very different.
Yeah, that's like, I last week when I was live, I described my upbringing as evangelical, and it was in a way. I was a part of an evangelical group on campus, but I don't know if my personal theology always matched that. Like,
Right.
to me, Jesus was always somebody who advocated for the poor, wanted you to be like generally nice to people. Was an immigrant himself, so probably like pro on those issues, but like, you take the political theater that was going on at that time under that candidacy did not really match up with that theology. So it seemed like to me there was this shift of, well, this is our guy and we have to kind of, go with what he says. Yeah, he talks about grabbing women in places, but like, oh, hey, David was a sinner too. Like there's this,
Right.
you kind of come up with these narratives to kind of justify the base. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that there was that tie there?
I think it gave a lot of evangelicals validity in some of their bigotry,
Mm.
and it let them hold on to beliefs that society has been progressing past in the last few decades. It was like like after having more progressive political leaders, it was like, wait, we can go back. We don't have to keep
Yeah. It's like, hey, yeah, we don't have to pick the moderate guy anymore. We can just be
right.
mask off about some
Yeah,
of this stuff. Yeah, and not be
totally.
afraid. I think
Yeah,
that's a great point.
that was a big thing, and that's what I saw at least amongst, the leaders and stuff that I was around, and they quite literally I remember being at Bethel School of Ministry, and one of the days they had an entire worship service in Trump's honor where they were literally like worshiping Trump. It
Yeah.
was bizarre.
That man, today is about you, Eve, but one day I'm gonna tell some stories about some people I knew that were really into Bethel, because Bethel's a whole other thing, man. You could talk a long time about the Bethel ministry and what that's accomplished and what they've done, I guess. I don't know about accomplished, because accomplished kind of implies that like something good was done. I don't think it was all good. But anyway, so going back to your story, so you've gone through the Bethel Supernatural Ministry School. Very cool. You've grown up in this life. You have parents that are deeply in the ministry and other family too. So you're now, you've always had these kind of thoughts, but now, especially with the presidency going on, you're kind of turning the other way.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also, I was in my mid-20s. I think it was just a natural progression of like figuring out the world around me and learning,
Sure.
about other religions for the first time in my life, and learning about the Bible in ways that I had never learned about it before, because I was in ministry school. So I was studying the Bible in depth. I was
Right.
preaching out of it. I was leading worship. And between like personal experiences and then studying and learning more, I began to become less and less convinced of evangelicalism specifically. And then
Sure.
I finally hit a rock bottom personally, where I was like, I just have to cut down to the bottom line question. Is there a God or not? Do I think there's a God? And my conclusion at the end of that, quite literally like dark night of the soul, like I stayed up all night kind of processing this question,
Yeah.
was I don't have any reasons to believe there's a God. And as
Mm.
soon as I reached that conclusion, I felt the biggest weight leave my shoulders. I mean, I felt more free. It was like everything I had been told I would feel as a Christian, the peace, the joy, all of that, just kind of settled in. And I was like, wait, has this been the root of a lot of my issues? Um,
That's the answer to that being probably yeah.
yeah. As my
Man.
therapist has helped me figure it out since then, yeah, that it was.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so you've figured this out for yourself. And about how old are you at this time?
It was right around my birthday. I was turning 26.
Okay.
And so, and I was married, I was remarried at the time. And that was another thing that was going on. That was a really dark part of my life that was not healthy. It was based on evangelical standards for marriage and all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Was
I'm sure yeah, there's
not
probably
good.
a lot of things to be said about that as well. But so you're
Yeah.
26 and then you've kind of figured this out. So do you talk to people about it? Do you consult apologetics? Do what's your strategy here?
I had been all along, like for the
Okay.
past few months, I had been talking to my pastors. I had been watching every debate. Had been trying to convince myself up until that night. And at that point, I was like, hold on.
Hmm.
And then once I knew, I'm very much a person where once I like reach a conclusion, I'm pretty sold on it.
Sure.
Uh, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm supposed to be leading worship this week, and I don't believe that there's even a God. And I also think this is wrong. And I think it's manipulation and all this stuff. So I packed one suitcase and I got a one-way flight to the other side of the country, called some old friends and asked if I could stay on their couch. And I left, and
Wow.
I never went back.
Wow, you just dipped. You
I did.
said peace out. See you later. See you on the other side, maybe,
Right.
and just left. Wow. So that's a really intense breakup with a religion you've spent your entire life
Yeah,
doing, like maybe not actively believing at all times, but at least going through the motions for, right? Like you
for
you
sure.
you physically have committed to this thing. Because I would frame my experience similar to yours, Eve, in that you're kind of sometimes physically and mentally out, especially towards the
Yep,
end there, right? Like you kind of feel like, well, in order to kind of do my obligation towards faith, I have to lead the ministry, do these Bible studies, do X, Y, and Z. Because there's definitely, at least for evangelical Christianity, there's like this checklist component of
for
this is what
sure.
you need to do in order to, one, be a good person, but also like in their eyes, right? But also like keep up with the status quo. It's a lot of like keeping up with the Joneses there. So
Totally.
you completely left, and you just started going on TikTok, or what did that look like?
Yeah, no, I definitely disappeared for a few years, and just I was like, "Oh, I can just exist. I can just
Yeah.
be,
You
and
can
I
just
don't have
be.
to."
That's true.
Right.
You don't have to talk about it. You can just kind of live your life too. That's also a valid option. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what my plan was. I was so happy to do that because my parents have a ministry that's very public, and my siblings all work for them full time. So they're like, that was my whole life, was just constantly doing and not getting to be. And so it was really nice to sit back and be and figure out, what do I believe, and um, what are my values as a human and all of that.
Right.
And then I've always been like outspoken, and especially about political views. And so on Facebook, I would still be posting some stuff here and there just for like friends and family. I didn't have a following or anything. And then the insurrection happened, and I was like, I can't be quiet anymore. Like, I know what this is caused by. I know
Right.
people that were there. Like, this is a direct result of Christian nationalism.
Yes. I'm glad you said that, because I have talked to other Christians about this particular issue, and I've said, look at the flags that are at this event. You see the crosses. Listen to the people who are there and look at the circles they encompass. This is a Christian thing. Like, maybe this isn't your particular brand of Christianity, but this is a Christian movement in part. It's also a QAnon movement and other things. But like,
And
that,
QAnon was that was a big part of my family got deep into QAnon.
Oh my goodness, really?
And they still are. And Bethel is very much steeped in QAnon. You know, Sean Foyt comes out of that. It's all heavily steeped in QAnon beliefs.
Yeah. And but you know, the responses I got from people when talking to that is, well, one, they're saying, oh, these are actually, this is actually a setup. That these are actually leftists. This was Antifa that was at this event, which is crazy, because it's like, you have people that were there.
Right.
Like, you were there and you're talking about it. You're like, yeah, everyone else is Antifa. Like, what? But also, like, it's just this, I see this pattern, Eve, where it's this, doing this terrible, awful thing, and then it's denying that it ever happened, or denying that it's a part of what you do, but it just keeps pushing and pushing and pushing this sort of Overton window of action. And the evangelical Christian movement, you know, today, I would say, is almost unrecognizable to the one maybe 15, 20 years ago, you know, in my opinion. What do you think?
Kind of, but also if you go back and look at like when Bush was in the White House, I don't know. I think there's still a lot of similarities there.
Yeah, I agree that, like, I think probably ideologically it's still the same.
Right.
I think they're just more like mask off about it right now.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
You're right
It's
about
like,
that.
I think like people are much more open about their bigotry, much more open about their nationalism, that what they want to happen, and they're not as afraid of the consequences as being seen as the kooky Christian anymore, because
Right.
it's just become more accepted,
Absolutely.
which is interesting. So,
well,
so
yeah, and
yeah.
that's why I started to get vocal again, and I made my Facebook public, and I started reaching more people, and my posts were getting sent around, and then people were copying and pasting them and posting them on my family's ministries posts, like in direct retaliation to what they were saying. And that obviously caused a lot of family tension.
Sure. Yeah. It would be
So
weird if it didn't, right? Yeah.
Totally. It did. And it got to the point where I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to fight against my family in order to speak out and be myself. And then I realized that was silly too. I need to be able to have my voice, and my story is valid, and I can talk about these things in a way that isn't disrespectful. So I decided, I was like, I'll try TikTok. I've been sitting around during quarantine just like watching videos about how to make whipped coffee. So I might as well make one myself. And I did, and I was shocked that it caught on. It was really just supposed to be a way for me to like get some relief and get my story off my chest, but I ended up finding a whole community there.
Yeah, it's so, for those who aren't on TikTok and aren't aware, there is a blossoming evangelical community on TikTok, which I'm thankful for, but also surprises me, because TikTok is also filled with the most awful propaganda and the most like awful the most awful things you can fit into 1 minute. Is all there, right? All the
Sometimes
tricks,
15 seconds
or 15 seconds even, right? As much fake news and persuasive tactics you can use, like it's all in there, and it's by people who are either promoting their own crappy businesses or just conspiracy theories and other BS. So and that's where you've been doing that stuff on there. You've been part of that community. Now that you are more popular, I would say, more known. Does your family ever talk to you about that? Do they ever like say, "Hey, what's up with that?"
No, they don't like to bring it up. I probably bring it up more than they would even like for me to, because I get excited about something and I'll try to find a way to talk about it, to connect with them. I got to speak on a panel at the Atheist convention and stuff like that I get excited to share about, but
Yeah.
obviously that's not exciting for
Right.
them.
Right.
So yeah, we don't it's kind of like a boundary that we have now. We don't talk about politics or religion.
Mhm.
And that doesn't leave a whole lot for us to talk about because of the way their life is 100% politics and religion. So
Yeah. I mean, it's one thing to be a practicing Christian, right? You go into church every Sunday, maybe you're part of a Bible study group, but it's another thing
yeah,
to have your career in there too,
right,
right? I mean,
right.
I can't imagine what that must be like. It's one, growing up with that pressure, but also just coming to that reality where it's like they would have to radically change their entire lives in order
Yep,
for them to even accept a modicum of the conclusions that you've come to now. And
absolutely.
I've realized that for my family. I've realized that for people I know who are really deep in that culture. And that makes it really tough. But like, now that you're on the other side, and you're kind of speaking to people, what's your goal in all this? What do you want to do? What do you hope to accomplish?
I mostly have two goals. One is to be a voice that validates people that are going through questioning, even if they don't reach the same conclusions that I reach. I want to be a voice that makes them feel safe to ask those questions. I want to be a place where they are also inspired by critical thinking.
Mm,
Um, I remember when I was deep in evangelicalism, there was an atheist content creator that somehow I followed on Facebook. It was like a friend of a friend from high school, and he would post the most offensive memes, the most aggressive atheist stuff. But
yeah.
those little seeds got planted. And I remember
Yeah.
being like, oh, haha, this doesn't bother me. Like, poor guy. But that made an impact and really helped spark some important questions that I would go on to ask someday. So, yeah, just being a safe place, a validating voice, and someone that sparks some questions for people.
Absolutely. We're going to take some calls in a second, but one thing I just want to add before we move on is I like that you added that you want to be a safe space for people, because we often talk a lot about, oh, we want people to start thinking critically, asking questions, stuff like that. And that's great. But the culture that you and I sort of shared in a way, Eve, I would say, and
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong, was not a safe space for questioning.
Right. Not at
Right?
all.
Like they pretend like it is sometimes. They say,
If you
oh,
stick to the script, it's fine.
if you stick to the script and if you ask the right questions, like, how much does Jesus love me, actually, like that, that kind of stuff is fine. But when you really get into the nitty gritty, like, so how come the Gospel of John isn't dated until 80 CE or whatever, right? Like, what's up with this? Is this an eyewitness testimony? You get into that stuff and you either get no answer, you get, oh, this is great for another time, or you get into the hard apologetics, if you know someone who's knowledgeable with that, and at that point it becomes like debate territory, right? It doesn't
Totally.
become a question. So I like the idea, and I have always tried to promote this to be a similar space where people can feel safe to ask those questions, because I definitely did not feel safe in asking questions in those spaces. So we're super excited to have you on the show, and we want people to talk to you, Eve. So we are going to get to some calls now, but before we get to some calls, I have to thank the patron of the week, because every single week, folks, we always give a shout out to one of the people that donates on patreon.com. The link to that is tiny.cc/PatreonTW if you want to support the show. I want to thank everybody that donates to the show. I'm a volunteer. I don't get any money from this, and most of the people that make the show are volunteers as well. So that money helps make this show better and also helps the ACA in general in what they do. So thanks to everybody that donates. This week's patron of the week is going to be Skeptic Carl. Thank you so much, Skeptic Carl, for donating on Patreon. And thanks again to everybody else who donates as well. You guys rock. And also special shout out to everybody that donated last week for the Secular Student Alliance. You guys are amazing. And I just want to remind you, you've made some college kids' entire year with donating and making that budget for them. So we are super happy that we got to do that event. We're hoping that we can do similar kinds of events and stuff in the future, but we'll see. But so far, we got very positive feedback from you guys, except for that one guy. I read a comment, Eve. My beard was kind of on my neck a little bit, and somebody said in the comments that I traumatized them because I reminded them
Goodness.
of the like Amish adjacent denomination that they grew up in, and I looked like one of their preachers. So sorry to that guy.
Oh
Okay,
my
I have
gosh.
since shaved my neck, and it doesn't look like that. But everybody else seemed pretty cool with it. So it is what it is. Eve, are you ready to take some calls?
I'm ready. I'm excited.
Okay, cool. Let's get into it. First call we're going to take is Mary from Florida. Mary, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hi, Eve. Hi, Dan. How are you doing?
Doing awesome. How are you doing, Mary?
Hi.
I'm good. Hi, Eve. I'm really touched by your story, and I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, hon.
Yeah.
Your name going by Eve was framed. How did you get that name? What do you mean by framed?
Yeah.
I'm an atheist, by the way, so.
Cool. Yeah, so apparently this is a term, I think that was maybe, I mean, it probably was coined before then, but I know it was popular in the 70s. I think there was maybe a Time magazine cover that said Eve was framed. Maybe I saw that at some point, but it came to my mind when I was making my TikTok and my Instagram account, because one of the things that was really healing to me was kind of retelling the story of Adam and Eve. I don't like going back to the Bible very often. There's not many Bible stories that are close to my heart in a positive way. But the story of Eve, I always felt, you know, I liked Eve, and I felt like I wasn't supposed to, and I felt like I was supposed to be angry at her and hate her and all this stuff. And I remember constantly hearing stuff like, well, it's Adam and Eve, it's the fall. But I don't know, I still felt like this kindred spirit with the character Eve. And so in the retelling that I've told myself is that Eve was the hero. She was the one brave enough to risk death. She was told, if you eat this fruit, you'll die. But there was a chance that she might gain more knowledge.
Eating the fruit. Yeah.
Exactly. And really, she was risking her life in order to gain knowledge and to see if she had been duped in some way. And in my opinion, she had been.
That's so insightful. Also, did you ever hear of the first wife, Lilith?
Yes, it's funny because on TikTok, anytime people, I do the retelling, everyone's like, what about Lilith? And I actually hadn't heard about Lilith until I was an atheist, because in evangelicalism, we don't talk about Lilith.
Me either.
Right.
You don't hear it in Baptist church. You don't hear about Lilith in Baptist church. No.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting the way that you talked about Eve, the character, as being the character you're supposed to hate, because it's
Right.
like, oh, she's responsible for the fall, which, if you grew up in the evangelical tradition, literally means that this woman is the reason why we are all going to hell, like, essentially, right? Like, she is the progenitor of that. And like, just the way you said it just also reminded me of, like, that's also like how, I don't know, that tradition and that telling of the story is also like how these deep misogynist roots have kicked in straight from the beginning, because even I feel like the evangelical community is not shy in saying, yes, this is a woman that did this, and this is a woman's fault. Okay.
Totally.
And the Bible makes clear too that women and men, as they've defined it, have different punishments for the effects of this, including like pain in childbirth and stuff. So like the Bible's not shy about like blaming a specific gender, which is pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah, not at all. I heard you talk about you still communicate with your family, so you weren't like shunned and totally turned away.
No, in fact, I have a really, I think, emotionally intelligent family, considering the background we come from. They do value me above all else. And while we don't have a lot of depth to our relationships right now, their goal is to love me, how I am. I know of things that get said behind the scenes, but they don't get said to my face. And I believe they genuinely do love me. And we hold very, very different beliefs. And I think they are worried about me in the same way I'm worried about them. I have to keep that in mind at the end of the day. So, but no, I understand that I was very privileged to have a family that did not shun me. In fact, I basically told them, hey, this is where I'm at. I don't believe anymore. You can have a relationship with me or not, but you have to accept this. And they said, okay, we accept you. Now, we've had massive blow up fights and everything since then, but they have never once shunned me.
It's hard, Eve, because again, just kind of relating to you and your story, it's like, I'm glad that you have a family that's still, is at least willing to talk to you when necessary, is at least having to have some sort of relationship. I have that with my family too. In fact, I would say my relationship with my family is pretty good. And then a lot of people don't get that because there's a part of the tradition that also says, depending on your interpretation, that you should cut the non-believers from your life, that you should stay just with the fold. And I would point out that is what many have constituted as a feature of a cult. But I also say that, even though we still have our relationships, I bet you would agree with me in saying it's difficult because we know ideologically what they think about us at the end of the day, what they're not willing to say out loud, because we were both part of that tradition. And I think that's what makes it especially hard, because my parents think I'm going to go to hell. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, at least from their perspective. And that's a difficult thing for us to deal with, because it's like, well, not only do I not share that belief, but I think that if we just got around this point, we would just be fine. Like, that's like the one holdup, right? At least for me. Yeah. So, yeah, it can be difficult for sure.
I grew up Southern Baptist in the 60s and as a child, and our churches are nothing like they are today, where there's movie theaters and bowling alleys and gyms. Yeah. It was just kind of cold, and the sermons were the last 15 minutes of the preacher's sermons was screaming and telling us we're going to burn in hell.
Yeah.
And it was, and my mom my dad was a deist. He was a mechanical engineer. I think he was a deist. He never attended church with us.
Yeah.
Mom was big on it, but nothing was heavily pushed at home. We just went for the fun, cute stories and hippie love Jesus, But in the Dominion, are they similar, if you know, Eve, are they similar to Baptist in the fire and brimstone and fear hell preachings?
So Dominionism is just a teaching that comes out of evangelicalism. I grew up specifically in non-denominational charismatic church, and we didn't have a lot of in fact, we had like no hell, fire and brimstone teachings. However, my very first intro to God and Jesus was being told that Jesus saved me from hell and hearing about how horrible hell is. What we had was spiritual warfare. So there was a lot of talk of like, if you have a headache, there's like a demon that you need to somehow get away. you have an open door to bad spirits, to demons and stuff. So that part was what was so scary to me. I wasn't constantly being told about hell. It was like hell was here now attacking me, and I had to constantly be spiritually warring against it.
Okay. But I'm amazed by the get them while they're young mentality. And fortunately, my mom was, as my older brothers, as we got to be teenagers, they kind of quit going, and I was the youngest, and then I quit. She kind of let us decide when we hit our early teens. And I kind of decided that I didn't want to go anymore, and she didn't push it with us. So I feel like she gave us, even though she was a hardcore Southern Baptist, she never told us that we didn't have an opportunity or shouldn't go get educated and make our own decisions. So I appreciate that about her. But
a lot of people don't get that.
Yeah, but Dan, I did see your college interview with Anthony on cosmology.
Yeah.
And I was a teacher for 30 years, and I can tell when people are. You can see I could see the wheels turning in your brain.
Mary, you're not the first person to say that. You're definitely not the first person to say that. I was definitely having a big think during that conversation. But yeah, that's still available on YouTube for people to look at as well. When I was a Christian, if people are interested. But Mary, I'm going to go ahead and let you go from this call. I want to give you a thank you for calling in and asking your great questions, and thanks so much also for supporting the show. Mary brought up an interesting point. I kind of had a mini epiphany while she was talking, because she brought up, like, yeah, churches today don't have movie theaters and gyms and stuff like that. Like, oh yeah, they that wasn't a thing before. It was just a building you go to, you sit down for an hour and you leave. But like, they really have become more like community centers more than anything. Right. They really want you to be there all the time. That's just so wild. I never really thought about like how church architecture can also affect you sticking with it. Because like, hey, I want to stick with this gym. The building's nice. I go play basketball on Tuesdays. Like, what's up with that?
And they offer daycare. So yeah, if you're a single mom, they definitely find ways to get people in that otherwise might not stick around.
Oh my gosh, you're so right on that one. It's really interesting to think about the ways that groups get you in. I mean, like, you can obviously have a gym and not be like, malicious in creating that. But it's weird how like you also like churches are literally the infrastructure for people's communities, even if they're not religious.
Yeah, it makes it really hard to leave because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Real quick, I want to give a plug here to our shop. If you want to check out some Truth Wanted merch, you should definitely check out the link in the description for that. We gave away some stuff last week if you missed it, but that's okay. You can always get some more stuff in the show or online, and you can do that by going to tiny.cc/merch ACA. We got a new shirt that we are premiering in there. It says, we want the truth. And it's got like the unicorn and some other and Bigfoot and some other stuff on there. So definitely pick that up if you haven't already. Y'all already know I love the hoodies and the beanies and stuff and the mugs. They're all great stuff. So please check that out if you haven't already. Right now we have open lines. So there's more opportunities for you guys to call in and talk to Eve and ask her some more questions. But until you do, I'm going to keep talking to Eve right now because I'm enjoying this conversation. Eve, your story is... it's fascinating in how on the nose it is for a lot of other people's stories, but also different in some ways, I would say. You made a comment earlier, I don't know if you realize, that you said you were privileged, that your parents have the emotional intelligence to have the particular relationship that they have with you. And you said something along the lines of how that's not particularly common with stories like these. What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate?
I think one of the most common messages I get is from young people that either can't come out to their parents as atheist or agnostic or even just questioning because they're still living at home and they're relying on their family and they know for sure that they would be kicked out. Or ones that maybe they're grown and out of the house, but they have kids. And so they don't want the grandkids having to lose relationship with their grandparents because they're very sure that they would lose that. Or people saying like, I've lost everything. My whole community shunned me. The church shunned me. A lot of times it's women that have gone through divorce, which I obviously sympathize with. So yeah, it's really sad to see that more often than not, you lose relationships.
Yeah. Like, I think a lot of criticism is geared at the atheist community because we often focus on these sorts of what people would characterize as extreme forms of Christianity, which is funny because in many ways, I think evangelicalism is just living up to like what the Bible actually asks of people to do. But like people say, well, a lot of people don't actually think this way. This is just some people that do. But like, how popular is evangelicalism in the United States? Because if my memory serves, I mean that's it, depending on how you define it, it could make up almost a third of the population, right?
Yeah, that's what I read last. It's a huge part, and it's a lot more young people than you would think too.
Yeah, Yeah. So there, I think you would probably say that because you're on TikTok and you probably see some of the Gen Z people like responding to you, right? Do you get pushback on their people responding to your videos and stuff?
Oh yeah. Right before this, I had posted a video, and you can tell which side of TikTok a video hits based on the comments you're getting. And
Yeah.
my video apparently just hit Christian TikTok because it's just comment after comment of you were never a real Christian, you're going to hell, all of that kind of stuff. So I get a lot of pushback for sure.
That's my least favorite thing when people say is that you were never a real Christian.
For sure.
And before I ever decided I was going to be on the internet and talk about this stuff, I fully anticipated that was going to happen to me. And sure enough, it totally has. There's lots of people that have said, oh, I was never a real Christian. I never knew about X, Y, and Z apologetics, or I was never really saved, whatever. And it never fails. It always happens every time when people come out. Why do you think people say that?
Oh, it's the easiest cop out, because if they can decide that you weren't a Christian, then they don't have to validate anything that comes after that. Like, your story means nothing at this point. I think that's why it's the number one go-to. And I also think that if they were to validate that I was a real Christian, then it would make them feel even more insecure in their own beliefs, because it means that they're currently a real Christian that's capable of, questioning their own faith.
I think you're right. I think it does bring up those insecurities. I think I would also add that there is a theological through line that says once you're saved, like, you have the Holy Spirit in you. At least that's what is very popular amongst a lot of denominations. And if you have this thing in you, as long as you're listening to it, you're not supposed to be able to be separated by this. And of course, theologies will differ whether you can actually be separated by that or not. Some will say, yes, you can still be tempted by the devil or whatever and still, lose your salvation. But there's a very common interpretation that says, no, you're supposed to have always been a Christian because you're now being led by the Holy Spirit. And that's your life now. You've accepted that.
Right.
So that's a very, us coming out and saying, well, we actually don't think this way anymore. That completely turns that narrative on its head. You can't have both things existing in the real world. Right. So you have to either say, well, this theology is wrong, or you were never a real Christian. That's the only other explanation, and that's where people go to. Very sad to think about. But now that you're out, you're making stuff on TikTok, and you've got, of course, pushback, as we all do with these things. If you could start over, if you could kind of get things from the beginning again, would you make any changes to what you're doing?
When I first, and this lasted all of a couple of months, when I first started off on TikTok, my plan was to not ever say that I was an atheist. I was going to stick to very generic stuff. I was on what's called deconstruction TikTok, which is basically just, deconstructing your faith. And so I have a lot of progressive Christian followers. I have ex-Mormon followers, all of that. It's not necessarily atheists. And then I realized, I was looking, and I was like, there's no women on here that are atheists that are claiming this. I've since met a few, but it was really just like straight white men that were saying, hey, I'm an atheist. And not that their content isn't helpful and all of that, but there was just a huge lack of diversity in what I was seeing. And I think it's because of the stigma that comes from saying you're an atheist. And obviously, as soon as I said that, I got all kinds of hate and stuff. But I will say, even my progressive Christian friends get told, you're not a real Christian, you're going to hell, all this stuff. So it's like, once you cross a certain line for evangelicals, they're done with you either way. But yeah, I wish that I would have said from the beginning, hey, I'm an atheist, and felt like I could own that, because I do think that it helps to remove the stigma, to have lots of different faces and different personality types, and things to remove that general, like, angry atheist stereotype, which I still get called, and I feel like I'm not an angry person. So
Sure. Yeah. That's so interesting you bring that up, because I think you're very much right in that I think this is common knowledge by now. I think many people have said this isn't novel, but like, the atheist movement, at least online as a presence, has had a strong dent towards the straight white male side of things, right? Totally. Like, in the year of our Lord 2022, it's still a problem. I would say it's better now than it has ever been, but it's still like a thing to consider, right? And like when people picture like, oh, what do you think of as an atheist in your mind? They usually some people still go back to the white dude with the fedora and the glasses and the reading the Richard Dawkins book or whatever, right? Like that stereotype is still in people's minds. And in my opinion, probably because if you're a straight white guy, you obviously in general are more privileged in society and have less to lose when you talk online for things, right? So I'm glad you're kind of helping balance out the space there. But I also think it's interesting that you said you weren't comfortable with using the atheist label at first, and I think there's something to be said about that. I think we need to talk about this too, like the deconstruction space online. I feel like is afraid to say the atheist label in general, right? I think there are at least some content creators I've seen who are just there, who are kind of already just there, but they don't want to let go of that thing, right? And I totally get that. For a while, I was definitely an atheist, but I called myself a Christian mystic because I believed you can still have you can have personal experiences with God, right? Because it has to be personal experience because everything else doesn't add up. And that's the one thing where people can't touch you at. Well, you can't touch my personal experience anyway. So I have a lot of thoughts about deconstruction space and tech, but you obviously have some experience in this area. Do you agree with these observations? Do you think there's people that are kind of there and maybe just don't want to give it up, or what do you think?
Totally. There's a lot on there that I hear them talking, and I hear their critical thinking skills, and I hear how they deconstruct and take down certain ideas. And then I watch them stop using that same rationale when it comes to spirituality or when it comes to whatever part of their faith they're still wanting to hold on to. And I think that's totally fine because obviously until you're ready to let go of something, until you're not convinced anymore, it's better, I think, to be comfortable sitting where you're at and not force yourself one way or the other. But absolutely, all the time. And there's been several that have eventually come out and said, hey, actually, guys, I think I'm agnostic. And then they're like, hey, actually, I'm an atheist now. So I've watched that happen, and I've been like, yeah, I know. not to invalidate where people are at, but it's just kind of like, if that's how you think, about X, Y, and Z, eventually you're going to reach that conclusion with a God claim as well. So
I think you're right. I think especially it seems like people, I would say my age and younger, are really into, labels are very important now, I'd say more than ever, right? People are very choosy and picky about how they want to put themselves out there on the internet, because you have a Twitter bio that just has, a couple characters you can put in. What are you going to say? Well, these are the things that I like to talk about, or I think define me in this space, right? Obviously, I'm an atheist everywhere I go, but it's not like, it's everything I talk about. It's just like what most people go to me to talk about, right? It's one of those things. So I can see how people could be like, well, if I put this label on me, then suddenly I'm a part of this community. And that, there's obviously, stigmas that happen there. So maybe as time goes by and people feel more comfortable with the label, we'll see people using it more. But we do have some other people that want to talk to us now. So we're going to talk to Doug, who's calling from California. Doug, you're live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hey, how you guys doing tonight?
Doing great, Doug. We're talking. We're just spitting over here. I'm enjoying this conversation with Eve. She is a great guest to have on. What do you got for us, Doug?
I heard she used to be with Bethel. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I attended their school.
Yeah, the School for Supernatural Healing?
Supernatural Ministry.
Oh, yeah, because we have a School for Supernatural Healing, so they like to walk around town and try and heal people all the time. And I'm disabled, so they come up to me all the time.
Oh, man.
I'm so sorry.
Oh, my gosh. I wish, Doug, I wish you were the first person to call in and say, I am a disabled person, and I've had people come up to me and lay hands on me and pray to me, but I would be lying because you're not the first person that's told me that. And that is so frustrating to hear. I cannot imagine what I would do in that situation. What do you do when people are coming up to you and trying to lay hands on you?
At first, because I've only been an atheist for about a year and a half.
Okay.
Or maybe 2 years now. So I used to let them do it. And then the last guy who came up to me, I kind of chewed his, I was in a good mood, and I chewed his ass. And I said, why don't you get to a children's hospital? And he tried to say that, well, I've seen people healed before. And I said, no, you haven't. Go away.
Just spitting facts, Doug. Yeah, you know, like at that point when they're like getting up and on, like literally touching you, like you have every right to say no, fuck off. Like this isn't real. Just go away. Like I fully support you there.
Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of years, but they're all over town. They love to try and heal you.
Yeah, that was part of my homework would be that we had to go walk around Reading and where Bethel was and we call it treasure hunting. And you'd have to find somebody that God wanted you to pray for.
Steve, shut up. No, you did not. You did not call it treasure hunting.
Treasure hunting. And you could either get a prophetic word for someone, which is where God would like speak to your heart about a specific person and some message, or you could find someone, obviously you would just pick on people like you, Doug, which is so unfair and wrong. And I hated it. I hated that so much. I wanted nothing to do with it. And so I would every time try to not participate in that however I could. And worship leading was one of the ways I got out of that, because I would get to go to worship practice instead, or I would be the one in the background just like singing songs in the park instead of having to go up to people. Because even then I remember thinking like, I'm sorry, we have not actually seen someone visibly healed. Like, why are we going up to people that have probably had a million people come up to them and further traumatizing them? I think it's awful.
But you know, you have that one pastor that you know, a friend's dad that went to South America, and you saw right, and then their legs were mismatched, but now they're the same length, right?
Pray for my hand to grow out all the way right now.
Yeah. Oh my. So yeah, I was a part of Crew, Campus Crusade. Now they're called Crew, and Crew would have these like little booklets that you'd have to memorize. It's kind of like a sales pitch almost, where you'd go up to these people and you talk to them about these ideas and basically get them to come to. And I hated that. That was my least favorite thing, because we're just bothering people who are enjoying themselves on campus. Yeah. And I actively like dipped a couple times and did not do it. But I did feel pressure to do it a couple times, and that was definitely my least favorite thing. But Eve, oh my God, treasure hunting! I've never heard that before, and I will never not remember that now. That is crazy. Doug, what were you gonna say?
I'll ask them that the next time they come up to me, because I live in Reading, so it's
just ask them if
Doug,
they're treasure hunting.
Ask them if they're treasure hunting. Please. That would be so uncomfortable if you knew exactly the terminology that they used. I bet that would make them think for a second. Oh my gosh. Well, Doug, did you have any other stories you want to tell about your time interacting with the Bethel Supernatural Ministry?
No, that's pretty much the only time is they want to heal and they walk around town. I've had one lady actually stop her car in the middle of the street, get out and ask me if she could pray for me as I'm walking down the street.
Oh my God.
I am so sorry, Doug.
Doug, there's so many things wrong with that. God, I can't, but I can believe it. That's just disgusting. Honestly, I have very strong feelings. I'm going to go ahead and let you go, Doug, and let you be on your way.
All right.
But thanks so much for calling
Thank you, Doug.
And telling your story there, because I mean that's just fucking ableist as fuck,
God.
Right?
So bad.
You're actively seeking out people with a visual display of disabilities, which first of all, not all disabilities are ones you can see, right? And you're just saying, well, what are you saying? You're saying something is wrong with this person, and that you can fix them.
You have the power to fix it.
You have the. What level of narcissism does it take to think that way, right? I don't.
Especially in Reading, when you know that there's hundreds of other kids walking around doing the same thing, but somehow you're the special one. They give out an award at the end of the year for whoever basically they think is like the best evangelist / faith healer / like the person that goes out and does that the most. They literally give them an award at the end of the school year.
Oh wow, that makes me really sad. Because like, and the one kind of tricks, I mean, we alluded to it earlier, but like the lengthening stuff and these kinds of things, these are all just like old con tricks, and that's really what people mean when they say, "Oh, I've actually seen this happen." It's just stuff that like Penn and Teller have been able to do at magic shows for years, which is the saddest part of it all. I think is that you think that you can do this and that you're actually helping people. That you're not. In fact, you're making things worse, which is so bad. But anyway, Eve, we want to show a quick promo that talks about some of the other shows that we have here at the Atheist Community of Austin, and we're going to play that right now. So check this out.
I would just love to let you know that whether you choose to transition or whatever transition looks like for you, wherever you find yourself on your gender journey, that if you are telling me right now that you're a man, you get to be a gay dude today. You are a gay dude.
Pretending spirituality to date, like the person they're interested in is spiritual, and they're like, "Oh yeah, me too." John, you're a young man.
I would never do that.
You wouldn't do that?
I would never do that.
You meet a nice girl. She's got the crystals.
She can go do her crystals. I study rocks. I know what those crystals really do.
What begins at conception is a brand new piece of DNA. And DNA is a molecule.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't murder a molecule.
And there's lots of models out there about our universe that don't involve a first cause in this way that you're trying to make a case for it, which is going great, by the way. The thing that I am wondering is just where is the evidence, though?
Matt's point was that the fetus is not a sentient being. It has no awareness of itself being there.
Well, actually, it's not my point, because I don't care if it's in there writing poetry and curing cancer. It doesn't have the right to use somebody else's body without their consent.
And we're back. You have to be watching the show live in order to see the promos that we are seeing, and check this and check it out on YouTube as well if you want to see some of those clips. But they are great, so definitely look at those on the live show if you want to see them in action. They are very, very funny. I always love looking at that promo. But hey, Eve, we are back and we are talking to you, and we're also talking to callers. So let's see who else wants to talk to us. We actually have a couple of people that have called in and want to talk to us. So now we're going to talk to Red, who's calling in from Ohio. Red, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's up?
Hello. Nice to meet all you guys. So yeah, as the screen call probably says, I wanted advice about how to come out to my parents being atheists. They're super religious, kind of similar to how Eve's parents were. I was homeschooled and all that. So pretty much the whole 9 yards with all the deep religion and stuff.
Okay, so the first thing I would ask, Red, is it important to you that you come out to them? Because there are some people that have never come out and they're able to just live their lives just fine. So if you want to make a declaration and say this is your identity, I fully support that, obviously, and we want to be in there with you. But we also want to make sure that you're not putting yourself in an unnecessary harm's way. If it means that you can continue to have a relationship with them, that it's not a big deal. I'm guessing, though, it is a big deal, right?
It kind of is. It's just something that's been wrestling with me for a few weeks now. I keep having these thoughts of my parents. I don't doubt that they love me as their child. Of course, no parent would intentionally hate their child, I don't think. But my thought that I keep getting stuck with is, would they love me if they knew who I really was, or would they resent what I represented? That I identified with myself, because they're very pro-life people. They're very homophobic. I don't want anything to do with that. I kind of want to, hey, that's not cool to pretty much take away human rights from other people like that. If they knew like those things about me, especially like me being pro-choice now, they probably would disown me, which I don't, honestly, I'm not scared of being disowned. I don't think that's the worst thing they can do to me.
Okay.
A little bit of context. I was abused by my parents, so I'm more afraid of other things they can do to me. I guess I just still have that bit of fear of the emotional abuse and all that.
So, Red, I will tell you this right now. I am not a licensed therapist. I am not licensed in any way to give any sort of advice on your situation. I'm going to give you my perspective, okay? And that's the best I can give for you today, okay? And then I appreciate you calling in and asking for our perspective. The perspective I have is that if you have to wonder whether your parents would still love you because you have a change in your faith, that should not be something you have to wonder. First of all, that should not be your responsibility, and shouldn't be your problem. Shouldn't even come to your mind. So I'm deeply, deeply sorry that you are having these thoughts and wondering if this is the case, because I don't believe any child of any parent should have to wonder that. Beyond that, it sounds like this change in your identity is important enough to you that you want to express that, and that's fine. But the first thing you always have to evaluate is, are you safe? And what we mean by that is, if the worst case scenario were to happen, are you financially independent? Do you have a place where you can live? Do you have other people you can go to in times of crisis? These are always the first things I tell people to ask themselves when they're thinking about this. So bringing this back to you, Red, do you feel like you would be in a safe place if you were able to talk about that?
I do feel that I am a safe place. I don't live with them anymore. I've been living by myself away from them for a while now.
Okay. So in that case, if you're safe and you're living your own life, and the consequences of them not having a relationship with you is going to affect you in a material way, then I say, yeah, it's time to have that conversation. Now, you don't just like go to dinner and say, hey, by the way, I'm an atheist now. Or maybe you do if that's how you want to do it. But, you know, this is a weird one for me because I didn't actually get to have the opportunity to do this with my parents. My parents actually found out through watching this show and then contacting me about it. But I always thought in my mind what I would want to do is have a sit-down conversation and say, hey, I want to tell you something that's really important to me, that values very much to me, that I have a lot of thoughts and feelings on, and that I'm telling you because I trust you and respect you, and I want you to know that this is who I am. Because they can't change who you are. You know, no matter what our parents' influences are on us, you're still your own person. So it's important to have that boundary line as well, and setting the tone in that conversation. Say, hey, this is who I am, and I'm not interested in changing this right now. Like, I think that's important to say too, because the first thing they might say is to try to convince you otherwise. But I would actually say, no, you should start off with that boundary line and say, maybe if you're open to conversation about it later, that you become open to that. But for now, right now, you're establishing yourself. You're establishing your boundaries, and you're figuring out what's best for you. And so, yeah, in my opinion, and I want Eve's take on this afterwards, is I think you should set time aside for the, you know, take them out to dinner or go to their place, invite them over to your place, whatever is most comfortable for you to be in, and say, like, this is what I've been thinking about. This is how I'm feeling, and this is who I am now. And the reason, especially emphasize the reason why you want to have that conversation, is not to harm them. It's not to cause them trouble or to cause them suffering, but because you want to be honest with yourself and honest with the people around you. Because that's what we all want when we talk about our identities, right? We just want to let people know who we really are. So that's my basic, like, ground rules advice with coming out for this stuff. Again, figure out why you're doing this, figure out if you're safe in talking about this, and then setting up those boundaries early on. Because this is, if they continue to have a relationship with you in your life, this will be a lifelong struggle with keeping up with those boundaries and making sure that they aren't violating that space that you've created for yourself. That was a lot coming from me. I want to switch things over to Eve. Eve, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I have a slightly different take. I'll just share, like Dan said, I'm not a licensed professional, so this isn't
Yeah.
advice. This is what I did.
Yeah.
I chose to write an email because I felt like it was safer for me emotionally and also more kind to my family to give us a little space so that they had time to process and they could respond after hopefully taking some time to really take in what I said so that I could be very intentional with how I said it. And I know that we really value like in-person contact and all of that, but sometimes I think we value it too much. I do think that a written letter or email can be just as powerful, if not more helpful, because it does create a little bit of a safe distance.
Yes.
And you can go ahead and set boundaries. I do absolutely agree that you have to have boundaries. Even if it's like, all right, here's who I am. And so that we can continue forward in a healthy relationship, let's no longer discuss politics and religion or whatever it is that you need to, and say, if these things get brought up in conversation, I will be ending the conversation. Until you're ready to talk about something else, whatever your boundaries look like. But that would be my take on that.
I'm hitting myself right now because you're absolutely right. I don't know why I didn't bring this option up, but yes, obviously writing a letter is a great way to simultaneously create that distance and make those boundaries while also expressing how you feel, because it's kind of like breaking up with somebody. It's like, look, you kind of have to emotionally process this, and you got to do that independently sometimes. And you're breaking away from an identity that was obviously very important to not only yourself but to your family, as evidenced by your upbringing. So we just threw a lot of information at you, Red. What do you think?
Yeah, I do think that these are very good options for me. It's nice to see perspectives of other people who've been through the same thing or been through similar. It is a bit tough because I do have younger siblings. That's why I said I'm afraid of my parents emotionally manipulating me through my younger siblings, because I do still care about them. I don't care if my parents want to resent or shun me. I care more about my younger siblings than them, if I'm being honest. Not to say that I don't love my parents, but my relationship with them isn't the best, and I feel like this is going to even put even more strain on it.
Yeah.
Are your siblings still at home with your parents?
They are. They are. They're very young. There's like a 14-year difference between me and the oldest of the three, and I'm turning 23 this year. So they're actually pretty young.
Yeah.
It may, and this is again not to give you advice, but it may be in your better interest to, if you can, to wait, to hold off a little bit longer, and maybe even slowly start introducing some of your new beliefs or lack thereof over time, and slowly start building some boundaries. Because I'm the oldest. I have younger siblings, and I was really worried about losing those relationships, and I have gone through a lot with them. But it does help that they all have their own independent lives outside of my, they do work for my family's ministry, but I have been able to maintain individual relationships with them. So yeah, I think if that's at all a concern and that's more valuable to you than them knowing you're an atheist, that might be something worth holding back on for a little bit.
Kind of testing the waters with what they might accept, right?
That's a good
that might be if you have the luxury of time on your side. There's some people who just want to get it all out there. That was kind of how I felt about it. I was like, one day I'm just going to let the dam break, and then the dam broke on me. But I think all of these are great perspectives to consider when making that decision. So I sincerely wish you the best, Red. I hope things work out. We do want to get to some other callers here, but one more thing I will add. I would consider getting the perspective of people who are in the live chat right now, or there's also the Atheist Community of Austin fan Discord is a great community that I frequent on there, and others as well, to kind of help you in this process, because you absolutely do not have to do it alone. In fact, I would strongly recommend you talk about it with other people. Yeah. You have to talk with people in there. Excellent. Well, that's great. Well, as long as you've got a community around you, then you know that you're not alone, and you're definitely not the first person to have that conversation at 23. I literally had the same thing at the same age. So good luck to you, Red.
Yeah, wish you all the best.
Yeah, stay safe out there. And I encourage other people who are looking for that kind of advice to also kind of seek out other communities as well that can, in the Christian world, that say keep you accountable, but it's not keeping you accountable. It's just like talking about your feelings with, because it's obviously a very emotional time, right? Figuring out these, not only your identity, but also figuring out the spaces that you've created for yourself in your relationships going forward, because they will change. They just will. Some for the better sometimes, and sometimes you have to put up those hard walls just for your own sake. But anyway, that got really deep really fast. I'm glad we got to help him out, but I do want to talk to some other people. Before we do, I just want to remind folks as well that we will be in the Discord after the show, so definitely.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Dan? Great. It's my first time. I see that we have a caller. Should I take the caller or should we wait for Dan? We are having just a temporary moment of difficulty, but he will be back. Let me see if they say if we should take the caller. While we're waiting, I will say back to what Red was asking about. I think there's a part of us that, because we grew up in evangelicalism, we want to just tell everyone now, like, I'm an atheist, because we were used to having beliefs where all we did was proclaim our beliefs, and we were supposed to preach and proselytize. And so it's hard to deconstruct and lose that mentality of having to share. But it's okay now. Like, you can just be. You don't have to always come out. I understand that can be really important, and if you really want to, you should. But that shouldn't be something that you feel pressure to do. And you should definitely ask yourself, this isn't just for Red specifically, but ask yourself, do I need to actually come out, or should I protect myself? Let's see if we're getting Dan back on. And I don't even know how to take a caller, so I can't, but we are holding. Let's see. Hopefully when they repost this in podcast format, they take this part out. All right. I'm supposed to keep going. So, back to more advice. I can tell you guys about the email I sent. When I came out to my family, I was, as I was saying earlier, I was in such a dark spot. And for me, it was life or death. Losing my belief was what freed me from a lot of that dark place that I was in. And so I was really honest with them. And I just said, I can't continue acting like I believe when I don't. And you guys can either love and accept me where I'm at, or I understand if you can't be there. I understand if you need distance from me. I understand if you need space. And some of them took longer. Some siblings took longer to come around. But the main response was, we love you anyways, and we'll be there. We're just sad for you. And I'm sure that's because there's the whole hell concept going on. But so at first it was like a lot of relief. And then there was a lot of the pushiness and the wanting to talk about why I was losing these beliefs and if I was just angry at God. And that's when I learned I needed to set the boundaries. And I wish that I had learned how to set boundaries first, so that I could have had that in place and had that ready. So that would be my other advice. Therapy has helped me a lot, so I would advise that. And let's see if we have any update. Sorry that you guys are just having to listen to me talk. Everyone on TikTok is used to that, where I just do lives and blabber, but I at least can usually see their comments, and I can't see the Discord chat right now. So I don't know what we're talking about in the Discord chat. Oh, wait. I see someone. I think we're still waiting. Sorry, guys. Do we have a way that I could take the caller? You're not, Dan.
No, I'm not. So we're having a little bit of an issue with Dan.
Okay.
We apologize for that. I'm Jason. The name will change very shortly. So yeah, apparently we're gonna go ahead and take another caller.
Okay, cool.
And this is my first time ever doing a call-in show, so
great. We're both new at this together.
oh yeah, this should be fantastic.
It's better than the monologue I just gave that was not planned.
Oh no, you were perfectly fine. So this one should be fairly quick, I think. We're going to take John in Canada. Pronouns are he, him.
Oh, I think I know who this is.
And John wants to talk about whether or not this is actually for you, Eve. If you actually believe that Eve was framed, and what that exactly, I guess, is supposed to mean. So, John, go ahead.
Hi, Eve. How are you?
Hey, John.
Suffering a little bit of a technical glitch, but overall fine.
Jason's the hero of the day. He made sure I didn't get left alone here.
Okay. So I'm curious about your name. Why did you choose it, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I shared a little bit earlier, so I'll keep it short this time. But part of my healing from evangelicalism and the stories that I was taught growing up, the Bible stories, while I no longer believe them to be true or factual, retelling the stories has been beneficial to me. And so, the story of Adam and Eve, we're taught that Eve is to blame and she seduces Adam into eating this fruit and disobeying God. And in the retelling of it, actually, Eve was the heroine who decided that she was brave enough to risk her life in order to find out if there was knowledge she was lacking.
Oh, that's interesting, because I agree with you. See, everyone thinks that it was a sin, but I actually think that Eve did the right thing by eating the apple, because if she hadn't, Adam and Eve would not have known the difference between right and wrong. They would not have knowledge, and they wouldn't have to make their way in the world, and therefore, civilization and us, we wouldn't be here. So we owe them a debt of gratitude.
Yeah, I don't think that the story is real. I think it's just a story. So as far as the story goes, sure, the rest of the story wouldn't continue, but I think the story got worse and worse from there. I don't think things went well. God was not happy, and everything kind of went to shit from then on. He was pretty angry with Eve, and her life sucked after that. She was punished for it, and the rest of the world was punished for it. So I don't know that I can agree with that on several points.
Well, whether or not the story is real or not is not really important. The point, the moral of the story is that we shouldn't be tempted by things that are forbidden to us. Forbidden fruit could be anything. It could be money, a bad relationship.
Okay.
But why is knowledge bad?
Well, knowledge itself is not bad, but there's something in life that if you get involved in, they are bad. For instance, alcohol. If you get involved in that, or drugs, you get involved in that can be dangerous for you. And I think,
but it wasn't drugs or alcohol in the garden.
In access, I can agree with you on that. But in moderation, as long as you know the consequences and take whatever precautions are necessary, then no, I disagree that it's just categorically bad. But if it doesn't matter, then why do you keep calling?
What do you mean, why do you keep calling? What are you talking about?
Well, I'm kind of glad that you did, because I've heard you so many times, and I was hoping I'd get to talk to you myself.
Anyway, so I just wanted to say that Eve did not sin. She actually helped us, and because of that, she's
so
not.
Why was she punished?
And that's why. Pardon me?
Why was Eve punished if she didn't sin?
Well, you'll have to ask God about that. I can't answer that question.
Well, I mean, then what's your, yeah, how do you know that Eve didn't, like, how are you reaching this conclusion that Eve didn't sin?
Because
According to the standards of that God.
well, I reason that if it wasn't for her, civilization would not exist. We would still be running around the garden, not knowing what to do. We walk around.
If Eve had, according to the story, if Eve hadn't have eaten the apple or eaten the piece of fruit, then Adam and Eve would have lived forever in the garden with God in harmony, and everything would have been perfect and great. So it definitely seems like there was a punishment. And why would God punish someone if they didn't do something wrong?
Well, he still gave an order. But my question is, why?
So did she do wrong or not, according to your God standard?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of my God, but I can speak God, I say, but I can speak on behalf of myself. I don't.
Yeah, but you just said she didn't sin.
Sorry?
But you said she didn't sin. But according to the Bible, she did sin. So which are we going with? Are we going with the Bible or are we going with my story?
Okay. Let's think of it this way. If you have a child, you tell a child not to do something. Let's say you tell a child to go in someplace and the child does it. You have to punish the child for disobeying you, but at the same time, it's still a good thing because if let's say the child ate food against your wishes, or let's say the child touched a hot stove, the child now knows that it shouldn't touch the hot stove, and next time he will listen to you. So the wrong thing had a positive effect, but you still have to punish the child to let the child know that what he did was not right.
What?
I'm still getting hung up on the whole, that this is a story and it doesn't matter if it's actually true. I mean, do you care about,
right.
whether or not the things you believe in are in fact true?
Because I can play around with the story all day long because I don't believe in any of it or in that God. So
yeah, the name of the show is Truth Wanted, and we want to know if this is true.
If you don't want to believe, if you really don't believe, then why are you doing this show? I just don't understand. Why are you so adamant if you believe that?
Because we're trying to find the truth. We're trying to figure out whether or not this story is true. And you yourself say you don't care if the story is true. So again, if it doesn't matter, if you can't prove that this story is true or anything else in the Bible is true, then what are we doing right now?
Right.
That's what the show is about. The show is about finding the truth, not, well, I don't believe the story. Can you get me to the point where it is believable, where it does matter? Because if not, then, we're getting close to the end of the show. We're having nothing but problems tonight, apparently. So either, you get us to your God, or we're just going to move on.
He's not my God. He's our God. And the ultimate proof is that the United States of America and all Western civilization was built on Judeo.
You're calling from Canada.
John, yeah, no, this is ridiculous.
Yes,
John, we played this game every single time with different hosts, and the simple fact of the matter is that, first off, calling it Judeo-Christian values is really kind of a cop-out to begin with, because you got Judaism, you got Christianity, you got Muslim, and it's amazing how that never gets lumped in there. But that doesn't matter. The simple fact of the matter is that you're calling from Canada and you're saying, oh, well, the United States is based on these values. First of all, they're not. They're just demonstrably not. So, John, I don't know what we're doing. You don't want to get us to the truth. So I think we're just going to go ahead and move on. All right. So we are, we are really close. And I think we've got another call,
okay,
which will probably go pretty quick. So we've got, let's bring it. Wesley from West Virginia. Pronouns are he, him. And let's go. What have you got for us today?
Well, Let's start with the miracles that Jesus did. Jesus, would you lightly thought that you healed teeth you gave everybody on earth, and do this to all people? Now, my name's Wes, and Jesus gave me a vision that I know he gave to everyone. And I'm talking of the Jesus that said, it is time. I'm not speaking from the spirit, the evil lunatic that said, sad and delicious. And as Daniel told the dream to Nebuchadnezzar before Nebuchadnezzar would receive the interpretation of it, I will tell you the dream first. And this dream is the words the apostles spoke on the first day of Pentecost, that all in the street heard them each.
Yeah, Wesley, hold on. Let's stop here for a second.
Can we?
All right.
Let's like rewind all the way to the beginning. How do you know that God, and specifically whatever God you believe in, told you this?
He's Jesus Christ. He was of the flesh. He appeared.
No, I'm asking how you know. Why would I believe you? How do we know you're not lying? How do we know that you didn't just hallucinate something? How do you know that God told you this and you're God?
I'm not going to convince you. I know.
Okay.
Then why are you
No,
calling?
that's cool. So Wesley, I actually want to talk with you on a earlier aspect, because do you remember when you called in January?
Possibly, yes. I do remember calling the show, yes.
Okay, cool. So the last time that you called in January, you talked about how all the religious texts that were perverted were going to turn to dust for 1 minute on that day, or actually, on a day. It did.
Yes.
When did it happen?
It did. It happened for a minute's time, and all the words on the pages were erased, and the pages were made blank in front of everybody's face.
Cool. When exactly did this happen, and how did it not make all the news everywhere?
Well, it happened again today. That you're put under a spirit of sleep that's what Jesus did, put you under a spirit of sleep that you won't tell.
That's amazing. I'm about to get kicked here, and you know what? So are you.
Wait. Well, hi everybody. I'm back. Internet just went completely out, and I just missed a crazy conversation. It sounds like, so that's really cool.
You did.
Eve, thanks so much for being there. I literally told you before the show started.
My worst fear happened.
I said, hey, I'm in a new place, and just want, the internet could go out. We don't know. We haven't done it here yet. So just FYI, you should do that. But I said, it's probably not going to happen. You're going to be fine. And hey, here I am. So whoopsie-doo. Oh, but I'm back, baby.
I'm sorry for everyone else that had to listen to my very weirdly pieced together awkward monologues.
Well, I'm sure they were great. I haven't heard them yet because I was too busy fixing things. And there we go, just fixed my audio up here. But yeah, watch the live, baby. But that happens. It's a live show. Whatever. We're getting close to the end of the show, and that's unfortunate because we have some other people who sound like that they would be like really good calls to have. And I'm upset that we don't get to talk to them right now, but you will be able to talk to us in just a second if you go to the after show. So we are going to be in the Atheist Community Fan Discord, and that is going to be a link to that in the description. They're also going to show it on screen here in just a bit as well, but it's tiny. No, it's not. It's not tiny.cc. Is it tiny? Yeah, it is. I'll get to it in just a second. But you can come listen to us, ask us some more questions on there once we wrap up the show in just a second. But I want to give a very special thank you to Eve for being on tonight and for doing some part-time hosting. Fantastic. If you could rate tonight's experience, Eve, on a scale of 0 to 10, what would you put it?
I gotta rate it like a 10.5. It was exciting.
Holy shit! Wow, that's awesome.
It was like a roller coaster, terrifying at moments, smooth sailing at the end. It was a great time.
That's great. That's great. Well, I'm glad that you got to be here. I'm glad. Contrary to popular belief, I was not raptured. I did see the chat wondering what happened. I did not go to the lion's den. I am here to talk to you guys. So, real quick, Eve, where can people find you at if they want to see more of you?
Yeah, I'm primarily on TikTok right now, and I'm also over on Instagram and Twitter. I got into recently, which is a new addiction. But all of my accounts are Eve_was_framed.
Great. And definitely check her out on all of her stuff. You have some pretty hot takes on your TikToks, I gotta say. Really awesome stuff. Go check it out. And if you want to find me, I am also on Twitter at ObjectivelyDan, although I think about quitting that website more and more every single day. I'll be honest with you, especially recently. But check me out on there if you haven't already. You can also email the show. It's truth@atheist-community.org. And I read all the emails that go in through there. So thank you guys who do send me emails. And I also just want to give a quick shout out as well to the wonderful, fantastic, stupendous, spectacular people that help make this thing happen, including when I'm not here. It's the crew who are rocking the swag and are coming in clutch when things go wrong. So thank you guys for doing that. I also want to talk about how you can help support the atheist community of Austin. If you really like this show, I've already mentioned that you should definitely check out the Patreon, but another way you can do it is by hitting that donate button there on the side where YouTube has a little big blue button that says donate. That goes straight to the ACA. The ACA, the Atheist Community of Austin, is a nonprofit organization, and YouTube does not get a cut of that. So if you want to help do a direct donation, definitely consider that as an option. And you can also become a member as well by clicking the join button. By doing that, you get the cool little emojis and stuff that come up on the side. You might see those in the chat every once in a while. Those are the cool people that have joined to become members. So if you want to be cool, that's what you have to do. And that's not peer pressure. Because I'm not your peer. I'm just a man in front of a microphone many miles away from you. I'm not your peer. I'm just a guy who's giving you a suggestion. So consider that suggestion. And thank you to everyone who helps support the show. Now, Eve, we're going to go ahead and go to the after show here. But before we do you have any words of wisdom you want to give us before we wrap up the show?
Have a better monologue prepared next time you're on a live call-in show in case you're left alone.
Dang, that's real. That's real.
That's some real talk. Wisdom that I wish I had told myself about an hour and a half ago.
Well,
but no, I had the best time. Thank you so much for having me. I loved talking and the callers. It was all great.
And thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciated having you. And folks, that's going to be another episode of Truth Wanted. I'm Objectively Dan. And remember to always keep wanting the truth. I'll see you next time.
Watch The Non-Prophets and join the hosts in the live chat Sundays at 3 p.m. Central between The Atheist Experience and Talk Hidden. Visit tiny.cc/YTNP.